then the game's over, and it's just kind of like, all right, well, see you later. I'll see you this offseason. And it's like, I don't understand how it goes from I hate you with a passion to, all right, whatever. I'll see you next time.
Hey everybody, Trey Wingo here. Welcome into another episode of Half Forgotten History. You know, the Carolina Panthers in the 2010s, when they were winning a lot of division championships, were really defined by three players. It was obviously Cam Newton at quarterback, Greg Olsen at tight end, but the linchpin of that defense was none other than inside linebacker Luke Kuechly. He burst onto the NFL scene with a couple of amazing years right out of the gate, and sadly, his career was cut short by concussions. So what to make of Luke's career and what he's doing now post-playing days? We cover all of that in this conversation with Luke Kuechly.
Well, first of all, let me just, how are you, man? I don't think I've seen you in like 3 years. Everything good?
Everything is great. Still down here in Charlotte. So I finished up and then decided to stay here in Charlotte. Obviously, Cincinnati's a quick trip away. So Charlotte's where I'm at right now. Everything's going well.
And I was told to give you grief or gloat because you and Greg Olsen are like BFFs, and somehow you're doing my show before his.
Hey, man, it's one of those things. I guess you gave me the call first. I'll jump on here. Hey, I said, I got to go do Wingo's podcast. We got some good history, so I'm sure he'll throw me on his podcast here pretty soon. But I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, suck it, Olsen. Suck it right now, Mr. Big Time Fox announcer. Take the L. Take the loss. I've got Kuechly first. You mentioned we have some history, and we kind of do. Like, we were just talking about this before we got started. First time I met you, you came up for that sort of those pre-draft car washes at ESPN out of Boston College, and I met you there in the studios. And your recollection of that visit was, oh my God, who is this giant that I'm going to have to play with in the NFL?
Yeah, it was Jason Pierre-Paul. So it was me and then JPP. And I had never, first of all, he's one of you talk about defensive end and what a prototype looks like. Yeah. 6'5", 275, lean and length. Like, his arms were so long, and that's what made him so good, is it's just that overall freak athletic ability. And I was like, man, these dudes look a little bit different than I do, and I better figure it out quickly, or these guys are going to take over.
Well, luckily he played defense with you, so you never had to block him, which was cool.
Yeah.
And we'll get into your NFL and all that kind of stuff first, but I want to sort of backtrack. And like, you grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is, I'm not sure if there's a more football-centric town. Maybe a couple in Florida, but like high school football in Ohio is hard to over-exaggerate how important it is, right?
Absolutely. So where I went to school in Cincinnati, you had your public schools, then you had your private schools. In the division that I was in was a private school league. So we had 4 all boys schools. So it was a Catholic all boys schools, and then we had a Catholic all girls school. So it was St. Xavier, where I went to school, Moeller, Elder, LaSalle. And you look at Moeller, that was Bob Crable.
Yeah, that's history.
You look at Elder, like Kyle Rudolph. So, and then LaSalle always had DeVere Posey. He was at Ohio State, and they've pushed some guys out the last couple of years. But it was huge. Friday night was huge football night. You had tailgates, and grade school kids would come watch it, because in Cincinnati, a lot of the way it works is you go to school where your dad went to school, for the most part in high school. So my grandpa went to St. X, my dad went to St. X, my uncle, my brothers, my cousins, we all went to St. X. So when you were growing up, regardless of what grade school you went throughout the city, you would go watch St. Xavier, St. X games on Friday nights under the lights at Balaban Field. And so that pride in the school started from a young age. So then when you got to high school and you put that helmet on and that jersey on for the first time, it was a big deal, because you grew up with it, and your dad went there and your grandpa went there, and you show up to school on the first day and all the teachers know how to pronounce your last name. Especially for me growing up, your name always gets mispronounced. But then when you get to high school, they pronounce it right. And you're like, wait a second. And you start to realize, like, they taught your brother, they taught your cousin, they taught your dad or your uncle. And it's just the high school scene, especially football scene in Cincinnati, is a big, big deal because of that.
Yeah, and that reminds me a lot of like where I spent some time before I got to ESPN in St. Louis. St. Louis is a very Catholic city. Cincinnati is a very Catholic city. A lot of those things you talk about are those Catholic sort of parochial schools that go through generation and generation of the same family going through those halls.
Exactly, yeah. Same kind of setup in Cincinnati. And, the thing that was really cool about it was you grow up playing grade school football, and then you play baseball. I played lacrosse. and you play against all these city schools. So you have your rivals in grade school, whether it's football, basketball, lacrosse, and all of these little schools around Cincinnati. And then that first day of high school shows up, and you're walking through the halls, and some of the other kids that are in your freshman class were like your arch nemesis
Yeah.
that you grew up playing against. And then you start to kind of feel each other out. You look at each other from across the room, and you start to realize that now we're all on the same team. So a lot goes into it. There's a lot of history of all those GCL Catholic schools, as well as the public schools as well. The big team that we always played was Coleraine. That was Kerry Combs. His teams were they were big, they were well coached, they were really good. There was battles both between public and private schools.
So you started playing football when you were in the fourth grade, right? That was your first year you played. And I read that you always wanted to play defense. Now, I find that interesting because like everybody is sort of gravitating to football because they want to score touchdowns. You know, they want to be the guy that scores the game-winning touchdown or throws the game-winning pass or catches the ball that wins the game. You always wanted to be a defensive player. What was it about that side of the ball that appealed to you?
You know what? I don't remember initially what made me want to play defense. But in grade school you play offense and defense, but I was predominantly a defensive player my first year in fourth grade. And I don't remember what year it was. I think it was either fifth or sixth grade. So either my second or third year playing. Everybody wanted to play quarterback, and we hadn't found a guy yet to play quarterback, and they were trying different guys out. So they put me in there for practice for like 2 days, and I couldn't figure out the footwork to hand it off to the running back. And I'm like, man, this sucks. Like, I don't get to hit anyone. I gotta worry about footwork. And I remember that first scrimmage that we had. We played St. Susanna in a scrimmage, and we ran like a boot play. I faked it to the left and then rolled out to my right, getting ready to throw the ball, and I got just destroyed. I got smoked right in the back, sack, fumble, terrible outcome. And I was like, this is completely wrong. Like, I am playing the wrong position. I stink at it. My footwork's bad. I didn't throw a football. I still don't really throw a football particularly well. And I was getting smoked. I wasn't hitting anyone. I'm like, this is not for me. And the coach is like, hey, we don't think quarterback's a fit for you. And I'm like, great, perfect. There's not going to be a single argument. Yeah, I'm good. You got it. You got it figured out. I'm good. So that was my one stint playing quarterback. But then, in grade school, you play offensive line. I played tight end a little bit in high school, but the defensive side of the ball was where I ultimately wanted to be.
Well, look, you and I have that in common. I was quarterback on a team once. We went 0-6. I was terrible. I wanted to play linebacker. The only difference was, like, I had no talent and you had actual talent. But other than that, we are just like, I mean, literally just like that. So when did you start to think, hey, I might actually be good at this?
I think you always, initially early on in your career, I always wanted to be playing the next year up. So like ours was third and fourth, fifth and sixth, seventh and eighth, right? So when you're in sixth grade, you play as the older guy. And then when you get to seventh grade, you're like, I want to play as a seventh grader on the eighth grade team.
Yeah.
And I really never played as a young guy. So in seventh grade, I didn't really play. In fifth grade, I didn't really play. But then when I was in eighth grade, I played. And then freshman year at St. Xavier, every freshman plays on the freshman team. And then there's like 3 or 4 sophomores that play on varsity. So for me, it was always, what's the next step? So when I played as a junior on the varsity team, I'm like, oh man, actually this is working out pretty well. And then I had a really good year. Our team played really well. We won the state championship. We had a bunch of older guys that got looks in college. A ton of guys played. So we always had college coaches at practice, at games, watching tape, talking to our coaches. And after that junior year, I was like, man, I have a shot to play in college. Senior year went well, and then I ended up at Boston College. And it was kind of the same type thing for me at BC. It was, I came in as a freshman. I'm like, I'd love to play, get some time. I didn't want to get redshirted. I wanted to go and play right away. And fortunately for me, unfortunately for some other guys, we had injuries. So our returning inside linebacker, senior stud, fifth-year guy, was coming back from an Achilles. So he was going to miss the first 3 or 4 games. Mark Herzlich was out that was the year he had cancer. And then we had like 3 other linebackers, for whatever reason, we had a guy get hurt. We had another guy miss the first few games for a different reason. And then they had to move a different guy to play outside linebacker because Mark and Mac were both out. So it just kind of fell into place. But after my about halfway through my junior year, I was like, I'm going to have a chance to play in the NFL. I just got to figure out if I'm going to leave after my junior year or stay for my senior year. So that's a long way to answer. I always wanted to play the next year. So in grade school, you wanted to play, as a seventh grader, and then you definitely got to play as an eighth grader. And then in high school, it's like, what do I got to do to be on the varsity team? So it took time, but I would say after my junior year, I knew I could play in college. And then after my junior year in college again, halfway through my junior year, I was like, I got a chance to play in the NFL.
And by the way, you chose Boston College over some really outstanding schools, Virginia, Duke, obviously for academic reasons, and Stanford. What was it about BC that stood out to you?
I think the biggest thing for me looking at those schools was, where can I get into a school that I wouldn't be able to get into without football? So like, I wasn't getting to Stanford, I wasn't getting to Duke or Virginia, and definitely not BC. So I was like, boom, that's my first criteria is academics. Where can I get in somewhere that's strong academically? And then after that, there was such a connection between St. Xavier High School, my high school, and Boston College for a lot of reasons. Number one, the Jesuit connection. I went to a Jesuit high school, obviously BC's Jesuit. Tom O'Brien was a longtime BC coach, and then he ended up at NC State. He left before I got to Boston College, but he had continually pulled St. Xavier kids out of St. X to up to BC for a long time. We've probably had a kid at BC from St. Xavier High School playing or even coaching for the last 25 years, probably in a row. Yeah. So there was an obvious connection there. There was a guy named Alex Albright who was 3 years older than me. And when I was being recruited, he would have been like a redshirt junior. So when I got to school, he had 2 years left of eligibility. So when I looked at it, I was like, look, I don't know anything about college football. I don't know anybody, but the familiarity is at Boston College. There's a Jesuit leaning there. I know Alex. Alex's parents were unbelievable, not only to me, but to my parents as well. Alex was a tremendous resource. I thought Boston was really neat. The St. X kids had a lot of success at Boston College on the football team. And then another one that was really big is that's when Matt was rolling. That's when they were number 2 in the nation. They beat Virginia Tech on the road in that night game in the rain where Matt threw it across his body. I think it was Andre Callender. They were rolling academically. It was strong. It was in Boston, which was sweet. And the St. Xavier connection was hard for me to pass up. I think that combination right there was a big deal for me.
By the way, right now, I'm telling you, Tim Hasselbeck and Damian Woody are loving this podcast. They're just,
dude, I'm telling you, I would have
so much props.
I'm not just saying, I would go there all over again. We had a great time. I wish we would have won some more games, but the experience there of the academics in the school, in the city, in the vibe, I've got lifelong friends that I went to school up there with, that there's a big group of us that still talk all the time. It was a special place. And, I'm very, very happy I made that decision to go up there.
So you decided to leave after 3 years and enter into the draft. What were your expectations going into the draft that year?
You know what? I think you looked at the crop of linebackers that year, and it was, the guys that were coming out that were big names were like Dante Hightower was a big name. Yep. That was Manti and I came in the same year together. So coming out, they didn't know if Manti was going to come out or go back to school. Ultimately, he went back to school. And then, Bobby Wagner and Levante David and
pretty good crew you're talking about here.
Yeah, that class of backers was really, really good. And I'm sure I'm missing some guys. I think Demario Davis was that year as well.
Yep.
We had really good backers that year. And I think just kind of talking around and talking to agents, and I didn't feel like I really had much left to prove at Boston College. We had struggled that year. I played well that year. I felt like my stock was at an all-time high, and it was something that I've always dreamed about doing. So I just remember when Manti came back, I was like, okay, boom, like that kind of helps me. And then I felt like Dante Hightower and I were both inside backers, but we had a very different style. Dante was like more of like he was like a 3-4, so obviously he ended up with the Patriots, and that was perfect for him. Levante was more of a weak side will backer, which I was kind of more of an inside guy. So it was kind of just like Bobby and I for the inside spot in like a 4-3 defense. And then Bobby and I ended up training together for the combine, and then he missed the combine. I think he was sick or something. So it just kind of worked out for me for whatever reason that I was like, hey, look, this is the situation. These are the guys in the class. If I run well and I weigh enough, I feel like I'm going to put myself in a pretty good position. But it was very difficult to leave BC just because all my buddies up there. We had such a good time together as friends, and through the whole college experience, it was a very difficult decision.
By the way, you mentioned Manti Te'o. Have you seen the documentary on him?
Yeah, it was. I'd never. You hear about it.
Incredible.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable story. But he's everybody that I talked to about Manti. I've met him a few different times, but guys that played with him all loved him. I just think he's a good dude. That was an unfortunate situation.
Yeah, I think history will look very kindly on Manti Te'o, and maybe not kindly on how a lot of us handled that situation when it came out. So you end up going 9th overall, first backer off the board. And I always like to ask this question because the draft is very, very strange at times. I can't remember who we had on the pod. Oh, it was Edgerrin James. He had Philadelphia flew him up there and was all a ruse. Like nobody ever met him. They flew him up to Philadelphia. He never met anyone with the Eagles and just went back home. Like, how much contact did you have with Carolina before the draft?
So I met with him at the combine, but you meet with, I don't know how many, 15 or 20 of the teams.
Right.
And then I took a 32 visit or whatever they're calling it now, where you go down there and you meet with the coaches and they feel you out, you feel them out. But I think the one thing that really helped me a lot was Ron Rivera and Jim Morrissey played together on the Bears. So the linebacker room was Coach, Jim Morrissey, and then Singletary. Those were the three guys. And I went to college with Jim Morrissey's son, and he was a linebacker. He was in Alex Albright's class, so he was 2 years older than me, and we were actually roommates on the road. So Mike and I are really good buddies, and we talked a lot, and it was some like little inside information for Coach Rivera. He's able to talk to Jim and Mike and get the inside scoop, but the whole process was awesome. I loved the combine. I loved training for the combine, but when you finally hear your name get called, it's kind of it's reassuring because you know where you're going to be for such a long time. You don't know from the end of our season, which was Thanksgiving, until the draft in April. You understand, like, look, I'm going to try to play in the NFL. I could be in 32 cities. I have no idea where I'm going to be. And then on the draft night, when you get drafted, a lot of emotions are going through your head. But the biggest one is now I know where I'm going to be, and I can set myself up, hopefully in a good position to have some success.
Let's just say that worked out. Why don't we take our first break here in Half Forgotten History? When we come back with Luke Kuechly, we'll talk about that success and how he sort of shot out of a cannon in his first couple of seasons. Stay with us. We're coming right back on Half Forgotten History. You open up a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter and you're opening more than doors. You're unlocking potential to do your own thing, be your own boss, and live out your own dreams. With 16 body types, your choice of a gas or diesel engine, and thousands of ways to customize, a Sprinter van is capable and versatile enough to help you drive your ambitions as far as you want to take them. So go ahead, unlock your potential inside a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter. All right, everybody, I want to tell you about an app I use quite frequently, and it's Zelle. Look, whenever you're out on the golf course, you're playing with your buddies, the round is over, you've either won or you've lost, and it's time to either collect your rewards or give away your punishment. Using the Zelle app is so simple and easy. You don't have to reach into your wallet, look for a 20 or a 5 and make sure you had the right bills. You open up the Zelle app and you either tell people, I kicked your butt today, give me my rewards for kicking your butt, or you can quickly and less humiliatingly just send them the money and you don't have to dwell on it. Either way, whether you win that round of golf or you lose, Zelle makes the transition of the funds so much easier and simpler, and everybody is a little happy. All right, back with Luke Kuechly on this episode of Half Forgotten History. And as you know, this season, Half Forgotten History is brought to us by Mercedes-Benz Sprinter vans, helping drivers unlock the potential that they have. So how did going to Carolina, you mentioned Ron Rivera being the head coach, how did working with a guy like Ron, who was a linebacker on that 85 Bears team, that great success, how much landing where you did helped you unlock your potential?
I think that was honestly, that was a huge deal. And, people talk about fit and scheme and situation. I think I fit into the perfect situation in Carolina. First of all, you kind of nailed it. Ron played with Singletary on the 85 Bears, one of the best defenses ever. And then he spent a ton of time with Briggs and Urlacher in Chicago. So not only did he play the position, but he also coached, two of the best guys at their position on really good defenses for a long time in Chicago. So when I got there, not only, like I said, he played the position, he knew the position, he coached guys to have tremendous success. But then just the overall situation in Carolina at that position and on that defense was perfect. You look at our defensive coordinator was Sean McDermott. He was fantastic. I love that guy. I think he's a fantastic coach. I'm glad he's doing well up in Buffalo. But his defense really highlighted the backers, specifically in the sub package with the Mike and the Will, and that ultimately ended up being Thomas and I. I had a really good coach that first year, Warren Beelan, great teacher, calm, patient, was great for a rookie. Showed me things. He was patient. He didn't get agitated. Very helpful. And then that room that I walked into couldn't have been better. You had Thomas Davis, John Beeson, James Anderson was just coming off a really good couple years as the third backer, and then there was a special teams weak side backer guy that knew all the spots named Jordan Sen. His locker was right next to mine. Yeah. And he was fantastic. Anything that I needed from playbook to Charlotte to how to stretch to taking me under his wing, he was phenomenal. And so when you look at that room, I had a great head coach that liked backers. Our D coordinator was the man. Our linebacker coach my rookie year was great and patient and put up with all of my mistakes. I had 3 older guys that were phenomenal teachers. And then I had Jordan, who was like my life coach in the locker room. It was like every check mark that you could have checked off to walk into a situation as a young guy was perfect, and no one had egos. So you look at that group of 3 guys. So Beast, Thomas, and James, and then me. It was like, well, Beast was a first rounder, playing awesome, Pro Bowler, coming off an injury. Thomas was Thomas Davis, coming off an injury. James was healthy, coming off a phenomenal season, and then I got drafted in the first round. So it was like, how are we going to figure out how to play all these guys? And it just kind of worked itself out. And it was amazing to me, and I learned a lot that first year of how the game works and how you should treat the game just based on how the older guys did. No egos. Coaches make the decision, competitive to the point where I want to play every snap and I'm going to try to beat you out. But at the end of the day, no ego, no taking shots, no treating guys poorly, no telling anybody the wrong thing. My situation in Carolina when I got there was about as good as it could have gotten in just about on any team. I was just very fortunate.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And you're right. Fit always matters. But then you had to do your job. Yeah. And you did your job at a historic level. For people that don't know or may not remember, he was the Defensive Rookie of the Year in 2012. And then you followed that up your second year by being the Defensive Player of the Year. In the history of the NFL, here are the 2 people that have accomplished that in back-to-back years. Defensive Rookie of the Year, followed that up with Defensive Player of the Year. Luke Kuechly and Lawrence Taylor. That's it. That's the end of the list. What does that mean to you, knowing that you and he are the only 2 players to have pulled that off?
You know what? It's super cool to me, and it's something that.
And he's a Tar Heel. He was a Carolina guy.
Tar Heel, just some ACC guys holding it down. But you know what? You know what? Honestly, was great for Thomas and I and all the rest of the linebackers is that going into my second year, we drafted 2 studs up front on the defensive line. We drafted Star Lotulelei with our first round pick, and then K1 Short with our second round pick. And then my rookie year, we picked up a guy named Dwan Edwards, another D tackle. We had 3 dudes that were just absolute problems for pretty much my whole time in Carolina. We had a couple other guys that were really good players, but those guys were just problems. They were all a little bit different. They were big, they were physical, they were athletic. And our defensive ends were really good. Charles was really good. We had Greg Hardy. we had dudes that were just Mario Addison, just dudes that took up blockers. So I think playing off the ball backer in Carolina for those 6 or 7 years where we had all those guys together was the best job in the NFL. If you don't block these two monsters up front, they're going to make the tackle. If you don't block Chuck and Mario, they're going to cause problems. So Thomas and I largely just ran around and had fun and hit guys without having to deal with any kind of blockers. It was fantastic.
Every linebacker that I've ever talked to says, if you can give me Hoss, I mean, Ray Lewis talks about the guys he had up front in Baltimore when he was at his prime. Like, you give me guys like Tony Siragusa and some of those guys up front. Sam Adams, Ted Washington, like those guys. Washington,
he had Suggs, and then
gosh,
he had just animals.
By the way, I got to tell you this story now, because we mentioned Lawrence Taylor. You mentioned Jason Pierre-Paul freaking you out. Like, one of my first TV jobs, I was in a tiny upstate New York TV thing, and I went down to a Giants game the year they won. They ended up winning Super Bowl 25, and I got in the locker room, and Lawrence Taylor walks in, and I'm legitimately terrified, that I have to ask this guy questions. And he's just this giant menacing Hulk. He comes over and goes, "What you need, man?" I'm like, "Oh, thank God." Thank God. Thank you for making this easy on me. Thank you for making this. So everybody goes through that on some level or another. So your career got off to a ridiculous start, and then we get to 2015. The year you guys almost run the table. Before we get to the Super Bowl and all that kind of stuff, can we just talk for a second about how nuts that Giants game was with Odell Beckham Jr. and Josh Norman that year? Like, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that as long as I've covered the sport. And it started with the pregame with one. I can't remember who the injured Carolina defensive back was. They brought the hammer or the bat out on the field, which was something you guys did keep chopping or whatever it was, right?
You call it that if you want.
Whatever. There was some meaning to it, but and those two players lost their freaking minds.
Oh my gosh. And you know how those guys are, Odell, ultra competitive. He was balling. Josh was having a phenomenal year. And both of those guys love to chat and yak. And media they got to have a storyline for each game, right? Yeah. And nothing was more fitting than those two guys. And they went at it. And largely to begin the game, Odell was quiet. Josh was quiet. But you had that sense that it's just a matter of time. And that's what I loved about the game is everybody had their own personal battles in the game. Like, boom, I got these guards that I got to deal with that are pain. I got a center I got to deal with. And then you look at like a guy like Christian. Christian's got his own battles in the game. But nobody is more singular than a wide receiver in a corner. So it was like, man, it's only a matter of time before these guys that are yakking all week, yakking pregame, before something pops off. And it did get a little out of hand, but I think the officials did a good job. There was one little incident where some guys took some shots late, but after that, you know what? It was largely pretty clean, other than that one situation. A lot of barking going on back and forth, but that's what makes football fun.
Yeah. Well, I always say that's why I have respect for anybody that played, because you have to be a different person. Like, you can be whomever you want to be and whoever you are until you cross that white line and go onto the field. And then everything that's not acceptable on the other side of that white line is pretty much acceptable. And you have to sort of understand that that's the world you're dealing in once you cross that white line and get onto the field.
Yeah, and then the funniest part is during the game, it's on. Barking, talking, hitting, whatever. And then the game's over, and it's just kind of like, all right, well, see you later. I'll see you this offseason. And it's like, I don't understand how it goes from I hate you with a passion to, all right, whatever. I'll see you next time. It's hilarious to me, but that's what makes the game fun is you can kind of change who you are when you get on the field. And for the most part, you can kind of do what you want within reason.
Compartmentalization, baby. Just put that over here. I'll deal with this over here.
Yeah. And then it's over, and then it's all good.
Yeah. So that season culminates with you guys going to the Super Bowl. You had to think. You guys were the prohibitive favorites. You had to think, we're good here. I mean, I love Peyton Manning. He was one of my son's favorite players, but he was playing dead in a Western. that year. The defense of that team carried them to the Super Bowl. And you guys had the number one scoring offense in the league that year, despite not having Kelvin Benjamin, who at that point was your primary wide receiver. Mm-hmm. You guys had to be brimming with confidence in that one.
Yeah, we felt really, really good. We played the NFC Championship game. We played really well. We played great on offense and on defense. We were largely extremely healthy for that Super Bowl, which is, a lot of times it's the case when you make to the Super Bowl. The best teams.
Well, Thomas Davis was out there with a broken arm, for God's sakes.
He's like a bionic man. So if he's on the field, he's healthy. That's what we always talked about. But you know what? On the defensive side of the ball, we missed some really good opportunities to turn the ball over. Yeah. And when you look at it, that's, I think, where we didn't do a good enough job. Was we had some chances for obvious forced fumble punch outs. We missed some interceptions we should have had. We didn't play well enough to win, and we didn't make. There's how it is in the NFL. You make 3 or 4 plays, and those dictate the outcome of the game. And on the defensive side of the ball, I know a lot of us have 3 or 4 plays each in our mind. That's like, daggone, if I would have taken an opportunity to make that play on this situation, the outcome would have been different. But that season was special for a lot of reasons. Obviously, the Super Bowl would have capped it all off, but that team and the energy in the city of Charlotte, as well as North and South Carolina, was fantastic. We had so much fun from OTAs to training camp all the way through the playoffs, and it was a special season that didn't end the way obviously we wanted it to, but just the times that we had on plane flights home, to the guys in the team, to in the locker room. We had, we picked up Jared Allen midseason. We got Charles Tillman. The team was stacked with just good dudes, the guys that wanted to have fun and were just super motivated, not only to win football games, but to make sure that the experience in the building, at practice, at games was fun. It was unique, and we had a great time.
Yeah, it's funny. It's that game is living proof that history is written by the winners, right? Because look, Von Miller played an unbelievable game. Don't get me wrong; he was phenomenal. The best defensive player in that game was Coney Ealy. I mean,
we always talk about that. Coney would have been. He would have been
the Super Bowl MVP. This is not disrespecting Von. Von, I'm going to Buffalo this week. I don't want you to be mad at me. I get it, but go look at what Coney Ealy did in that game.
Sacks, fumbles, interceptions.
If the Carolina Panthers win that game, Coney Ealy is walking away as a Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just, that's what you want in the NFL. You want great games with players making plays. It was unbelievable. It was fantastic. Obviously you want to win, but to say that you played in a Super Bowl is a special thing.
So if 2015 was the peak experience for you in the NFL, things began to unravel a little bit in 2017 for you when you began some concussion issues.
Yeah.
When did you realize this might be a problem for me?
This is one of those things where, you get banged up in different situations, your shoulders, your back, your knees, everything kind of takes its toll. And it just got to the point where I was like, you know what, this is something I love, but I want to be able to do stuff as I get older. And that ultimately was the decision. I don't think it was one factor or another. It was just, hey, gotten banged up a little bit for different reasons. And this is the right time for me to kind of walk away. And that ultimately ended up being in 2019. But, I was largely healthy for a large part of my career. And then those last couple of years just really crept up on me quickly.
So, the first concussion, they came in 2017. And then there was that, I think it was the game in Arizona, if I'm not mistaken, where you had to get carted off. And that
was a New Orleans Saints. Yeah,
that was New Orleans. Sorry. And there were some tears, and it's just, I think it made a lot of people sad, to see you like that. And that was, sometimes when you have a brain injury, you can't control your emotions the way other people can. What was going on there?
You just, you try to, they all affect people very differently. And I think, when you read about things and you learn more about it, you kind of understand that every hit to the head is a little bit different. Everybody reacts a little bit differently. One is not better than the other, or one doesn't dictate severity over one of the other. And for me, it was, I always just wanted to be out there, and I wanted to play, and I wanted to be around the guys, and I wanted to feel like I was contributing to the team. So when you can't play, it's a difficult thing.
was it a difficult decision to make? Because, that transition is always really hard.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that in a minute. But like, when you realize the thing that you've been doing since you were 4 and you were historically good at it when you were healthy, how hard is it to come to grips with that at a really young age? Like, you retired after 8 years.
I think it's super difficult, but everybody's career comes to an end for a different reason. Whether it's you banged up, you're an old guy, you aren't good enough anymore, maybe you want more money than people are going to give you, so you retire that way. I think everybody ends their career for the large part. I would say a majority of guys don't get to pick how they want to go out, right? And I would have loved to play a little bit longer, but that just wasn't the situation. But I knew it was the right decision for me and the right decision for my family, and ultimately the right decision for me for years down the road. So
that doesn't make it easy, though. Like, you might have known it was right, but that doesn't make it any easier.
Yeah, it was difficult. I will say that, because I loved everything about it. I loved the guys in the team. I loved being in the locker room. I loved the training aspect of it. I loved to compete. I think the energy in the stands and the stadium is one of the best things and the coolest things in the world. And you got to play in the NFL. I mean, at the end of the day, that's a dream for a lot of people. I know it certainly was a dream for me. I loved every moment of it. I miss it, but it was a decision that had to be made, and it was difficult, and I miss it. And but you also got to look at it from the perspective of how fortunate I was to have the opportunity to play in the league with a great group of guys and a great organization for as long as I did. And, like we talked about, playing a Super Bowl, it was pretty cool. It just didn't end the way I wanted it to, but that's okay.
If you were healthy, would you have wanted to play longer, or was it completely a health decision for you?
Yeah, I would have played as long as my body would have allowed me to. I would have played 20 years if I could have, but ultimately that just wasn't the situation.
Yeah. All right, why don't we take our second break here, and we'll come back on this episode with Luke Kuechly on Half Forgotten History and talk about what he's doing now. And again, maybe we'll make fun of Greg Olsen again. Stay with us.
Yeah, Greg's the best.
Hey, if you're thinking about placing a bet this weekend on the NFL, let's get you caught up with everything you need to know with Trey's Trends, presented by Caesars Sportsbook. Well, this week, Kansas City and San Francisco meet for the first time since Super Bowl 54, where the Chiefs won 31-20 as a 1.5-point favorite. Now, this time the game is played in San Francisco / San Jose / the Northern Bay Area, wherever the Niners call themselves home. And the Chiefs are a 3-point road favorite. Why are they a 3-point road favorite coming off a loss? Because Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes absolutely devour NFC teams. They've won 13 straight games over NFC teams. That's the second longest streak since the AFL-NFL merger of 1970. The only longer one was a 17-game interconference streak from the Patriots from 2005 to 2009. But, as we said, this one's at home for San Francisco, and the Niners do a good job of protecting their house. They've won 6 straight home games. That's the longest active streak in the NFL, and they've managed to cover each and every one of those games. It's the longest streak since they had an 8-game home winning streak from 2011 through 2012. And while the Chiefs and Niners are coming off losses, they're still among the favorites to win it all at Caesars Sportsbook. The Chiefs still have the third best odds at 7-1, while the 49ers have the sixth best odds at 18-1. And now, if you're ready to bet, download the Caesars Sportsbook app to get all the information you need.
All right, back with Luke Kuechly on Half Forgotten History. So the transition can be difficult, right? From doing something you've done your entire life and something you were tremendous at. How was the transition into finding the next thing for you?
Yeah, so to be honest, I'm still kind of searching around for it. I worked with
That's okay, by the way. That's okay.
Yeah. And I worked with the team in 2020 in the scouting department, and that was super cool. I learned a lot. I understand, we went through, free agency and the draft and Senior Bowl and what it looks like during the season for guys and how to bring guys in on, free agent visits. And, you learn a lot about the NFL that you don't learn when you're playing, from what other teams look like to what teams want in guys, and how free agency and how the cap and how all of that stuff works and how intricate it is and why they cut guys and why they bring guys in. When you're playing, you're kind of like, why are we doing that? Just keep him. He's fine. Yeah. But versus when you're in the front office, it's like, I totally understand why they're doing this. And so I learned a lot, but I knew that maybe this isn't what I want to do long-term. I took last year and love to hunt and fish. That's one of my favorite things to do. So last fall, that's what I did. I went on a bunch of hunting trips with my dad, my brothers, my cousins. I went fishing. I had a fantastic time. It was something that I've been wanting to do since I started playing football that I just never was able to do because, September, October, November are the best times to go out and do all that stuff. And, we just didn't have time to do that. So I did that last year. That kind of bled into like February, March. And then now I'm trying to figure out what I want to do next. So kind of what I'm doing right now is I'm coaching a 5th or 11U team with Greg. So that's been a ton of fun. We're 1-1 right now. We've got another game this weekend, hopefully to get 2-1. We've got practices a couple times a week. We got like 24 kids, and it's been awesome. It's been awesome trying to figure out the best way to coach these kids, the best way, to get them lined up on defense. Everything that I think that works in my head, I'm like, all right, this will be a great idea. This is why we did it. This is the application to it. And then you play in the first game, you're like, wow, that was just a complete waste of time. None of that stuff I put in matters at all. So after the first game, I completely switched what we were doing on defense because I'm like, this is too complicated. We don't need to be doing all this. Half the kids just want to line up and run forward and hit guys. So we kind of changed some things with that. So that was cool. I'm doing some Panthers radio stuff, I did my first game this past weekend with Jake Delhomme and Anish Shroff. He's our new play-by-play guy. Those guys
know Anish
awesome.
very well. Know Jake Delhomme very well. The pride of Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, baby.
Yeah, man. Don't get it twisted. He'll let you know that he's from Louisiana too.
Yeah. Well, he opens his mouth. Everybody knows.
I'm doing some work with this company called Q Collar. When I was playing, I wore that collar that it helps with subconcussive hits and different things like that. So just trying to find ways to help people out and then get my football fix through Greg and his little fifth grade team and then the radio stuff. So it's been fun. I've got a lot more free time than I did when I was playing. And I just got to do my best to fill that up. So I'll fall into something here, but I miss football. It's something that, you talk to guys that are done playing. I think everybody misses it. So it's not like I'm alone in that, but it's just, I miss the game. I miss everything about it. It was a special time, but you know what? There's going to be something else out there that I'm going to feel the same way about. And I'll keep working until I find that.
Now, listen, when you're coaching with Greg at these 11 and unders, you're not blowing them up like you did that one kid at camp that one year that juked you, and then you went and just rocked him.
That kid, you know what? I remember being at the camp. They're like, oh, we're going to do a one-on-one. And I was like, all right, cool. They got this kid, and they put him out. I'm like, this is going to be a problem. This kid, I looked at him, and I was like, this is a bad matchup. I was like, and I got caught in between. I'm like, all right, should I go like half speed and let him win? Yeah. Or should I go like full speed? Or should I be somewhere in between? And then I started looking at him more and I'm like, there's nothing I can do that's right. So I tried to just go get him and he just shook me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that about went as bad as it could have gone. The kid hit me with he sped me up, slowed me down. And then he took off. And I was just like, gosh, you got me, dude. I don't even know what to say. I can't even say anything to you.
But you got him back. Like you got yours the next time around.
So I was gonna try to run because I was like, I know what he's gonna do. Yeah. And so this time I just ran right at him, and I thought I was gonna try to tag off on his back hip like I was in practice. And then I started running at him, and then he stopped, and I bumped into him. I'm like, oh my gosh, buddy! Not only did you shake me and make me fall down basically, and 100% got me. But then I hit you too. So it's like double whammy. I got shook and then I hit you. I looked like a dodo. It was like the ultimate double whammy. The kid just dominated me. And then I was at lunch 2 months ago with one of my buddies, and our waitress was like, hey, do you remember this camp? And I was like, yeah, of course. Blah, blah, blah. She's like, that was my brother. I was like, oh my God. I was like, of course.
Yeah. What's he doing now? Do you know?
Oh, he's probably making people fall over, shaking dudes, playing on varsity as a sixth grader. The kid was awesome too. It was hilarious. The kid 100% got me. He dominated me. It was I just remember leaving that camp dang.
Yeah.
that kid got me. So it was hilarious. He was great. His family was great. It was hilarious.
You got him back though. You got him back. All right. So before we wrap this up, give me the best hit of your career. Is there one you remember that, man, that was clean. It's what I lived for. It's why I do this. And I just rocked this guy in the end.
Okay. So I'll give you one on each side. So
all right. Love it.
2014, we played Cincinnati in Cincinnati. Yeah. And they had Giovanni Bernard.
North Carolina.
Yeah, North Carolina guy. And I remember I would watch tape with McD on Saturdays before our meetings. And
by the way, for those that don't know, that's Sean McDermott, who's now the Bills head coach.
Yeah. So I remember we were watching a game or a cut up or whatever. And I remember them running this toss crack play. And I just remember McD being like, hey, I wouldn't be surprised if we get this because of X, Y, and Z, however we lined up or a pressure that we brought or rotation or whatever it was. He's like, don't be surprised if we get this play tomorrow. And I was like, all right, cool. Yeah. And I just remember it was like second or third quarter maybe. And it was like, oh my gosh, like here's that formation. If they bring this guy in on motion, then this was the toss look. And I just remember like it just like came together perfectly. Like line up in the set where I was lined up on the defense, I was clean. So like I had to beat like a backside tackle or a guard or something. And if I took a good angle, there was no way they were going to block me just based on our alignment. I was in a really good spot. So they brought the motion in. And so I was like, I'm going to take a step towards this toss side. And if they do it, great. If not, like whatever. Yeah. And he comes running in and like you can see his eyes in the angle at which he's coming in from like the outside in to crack. And like there's just like a body language of these guys. Like if he's running a route, like he's not running like this, or if he's going across the formation, he's not running like this. I remember he came running in and I was like, oh my gosh, here it comes. Yeah. And he cracked and then they pulled both guys and then they tossed it and I beat my block and like the two crack guys blocked like our D end and like our nickel. And then the poolers blocked like the corner in our other backer. And it was like Red Sea parted. He didn't see me. Gio didn't see me because he was trying to stem up a corner of safety. And it was like clean, like bang on our sideline. It was like, that is like, I don't know what quarterbacks think. I don't know what receivers think, but like, to me, that was like the ultimate, like saw it on tape, saw it in the game, took a step. Everybody else got blocked. Like, it's like I had invisible paint on and nobody saw me. The running back didn't see me. The offensive line didn't see me. It was like, it's about as good as it could have gotten. It was perfect.
So if that's the perfect one, obviously there's one where you got, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I got smoked by Mike Robinson.
Oh, okay.
Big dogged me. So we were playing Seattle. My rookie year, and it was a pass play. We dropped in the coverage. It was like cover 3. So drop in there and we got vision on Russ, and Russ breaks the pocket and he's still on the other side of the line of scrimmage. So like, I'm not coming out of coverage. He crosses the line of scrimmage. I'm like, oh, it's on. Like, I'm going to try to smoke him. And he's literally like, he's running straight at me. And I'm like, oh, perfect. Yeah. Like, he's running at me. I'm running directly at him. Like, this is lining up to be perfect. And at the last second, like, he turns, like, he goes this way. Like, he runs to my left. And so, like, of course, I'm like tracking him. And I just see like kamikaze missile coming at me. And it's Mike Robb. And he just like, boom, just crushes me. And he like hit me so hard and I didn't see it coming. And I just like crumpled to the ground. But it was one of those hits where you don't feel it. It doesn't hurt. When you stand up, like, you feel fine. But he hit me so hard and so flush and so clean that I kind of just like crumbled to the ground. And I remember being on the ground, like, that's why he was running right at me, because I didn't see Mike Robb. And I remember Mike Robb stood over the top of me. I think he helped me up and he just like smiled at me and like, he didn't even have to say anything. Like all he had to do was just like look at me, smile at me, smirk. He probably let out a little bit of a laugh. And I was like, fair enough. You got me. Fair enough. Yeah, and I know he still remembers that because I brought it up to him before. Clean, everything, like great hit. And probably the same thing for him. He's like, oh, dude, dumb rookie, doesn't know what he's doing. I'm going to deplete him and let him know, like, this is the NFL. And he very much did that.
He very much did that.
He got me.
Last thing before we let you go. Do you even think about the Kuechly Hall of Fame?
No, I don't. You know, it's one of those things like you just, you play your game, you do the best you can. Obviously, it'd be a phenomenal thing. It'd be super cool to get in there. There's so many guys that I looked up to when I was playing that are obviously in there the most recent guys of, Derek Brooks and Earl Acker and obviously Ray Lewis, all those guys that you grew up watching. You're like, man, like those dudes can play. And they were all a little bit different, from Brooks and his coverage skills to Lack playing on that Bears defense to Ray being on those dominant Ravens defenses for as long as he did. It'd be really cool to get in, but you go play your time in the NFL and you let everybody else sort it out. But I mean, I'd be lying if I said it wouldn't be a really cool thing, to wrap up the career.
Well, let me put it this way. Just keep reminding people the list is you and Lawrence Taylor. All right. Every once in a while, just you and Lawrence Taylor. That might help you on that venture. Well, look, that's not your style, but listen, I really appreciate catching up. Hadn't talked to you in a while. Always good to talk to you, man. And best of luck being a media slob like the rest of us now. You'll find out it's not that great.
There we go. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right, buddy.
So thanks again to Luke for joining us. We look forward to his continued success coaching Greg Olsen's son's flag football team. And we got him on our podcast before Greg got him on his. So take the L, Olsen. Take it. Wear it with pride. Coming up next week, a guy who sometimes had to take the L with pride because that was the position he found himself in, Josh McCown. Talk about a journeyman quarterback who had a couple of really good seasons, but he has some really great insights on what it's like to be the quarterback of a team that isn't going to be any good. That's next week on Half Forgotten History. We'll see you then.